Everybody to Last Men Standing, the Circa Survivor Pool podcast. My name is Tony Farmer. He is Jason Anik. We have a lot to talk about today. So much so that midweek I sent Jason a text and I said, dude, we might have to do two shows. This show is going to go a long way because there was a lot that happened in week two. Not a lot of carnage per se, but a lot of sweat and so much to cover in week two. And then, we're going to also preview the week 3 games as well. Jason, how you doing over there, buddy?
I'm doing great. Maybe not as well as I was doing last week when I was joining you in person at Stadium Swim, but I'm doing okay. It is amazing that we say the same thing almost after week 2 as we did after week 1 in terms of sweat versus carnage. But man, I can't wait to talk about it. And I will say the lack of carnage, a lot of sharps still in this thing. And the more people that are in this contest, the more people may be watching our show tonight, right?
Absolutely, man. Very true. That you're right. The longer people stay alive, the longer our numbers will stay up. That's a good call. But 1,180 people eliminated in week 2. That sounds like a lot, but now about 10% total of the field has been eliminated after weeks 1 and 2. And I want to make a point here that this is like a record low number of people who've been knocked out in Circa. Prior to this season, it was 11% in week 1 alone. We're not even at 11% almost. We're not even at 11% after 2 weeks. Right. So it has been really conservative in terms of the number of eliminations so far. And as I said on one of our prior shows, it reminds me of the movie Jackass, where those guys are waiting to get kicked in the nuts and they're just keeping their eyes closed and they know the pain is coming and they're bracing for it. That's kind of how I feel. I thought it was coming in week 2. I was wrong, as you can see on the screen there. But now I'm like, oh boy, it's week 3, right? Right? Maybe it's week 4. We'll see. We're all going to find out together. This is great.
It's just insane. And we'll reference that graphic and go back to it over and over again. And I was thrilled when you sent me the text that we might go over, because I don't like having a leash on this thing. I like letting it go off the rails because there's so many ways in which we could take it. And as we come to you Wednesday nights live, 7 o'clock, and follow us, by the way, everywhere at Last Men Pod. But gosh, it feels like a long time ago that our guy House was playing the Thursday night game, 1 of 66, however many entries House had on that Packers game on Thursday night, right? Thursday night feels like weeks ago, even though it was just 6 days ago. So
Circa Survivor is a bit of a time warp, isn't it? You kind of forget about what's going on in your life. The days start to blend together. It gets a little weird when you start focusing so much on it. You know what it reminds me of? Have you seen Fight Club, Jason?
I have.
So that scene where like he's in the office and he says something to the effect of like, when you start getting addicted to Fight Club, all you think about is Fight Club. And like all the noise in the background is like on half volume level. That's how I feel about Circa Survivor sometimes. It kind of dominates your brain.
And I will tell you, for someone who absolutely loves point spreads and has lived my life looking at point spreads, betting on point spreads, I've said this to you before. You're right. It is like Fight Club because I just look at Survivor. I mean, yes, I look at the lines as some point of reference, but I've never cared less about these betting lines, which just blows me away. My whole focus is on Survivor. Even last week, being out in Vegas on Sunday, having access to a sports book where I can go crazy, I find myself thinking about the Survivor Contest.
Absolutely. And Jay, we got the comments are rolling in here. Jason, before we talk about our takeaways from week 2, what we can get out of it from a Survivor pool perspective, who were you on in week 2?
So my brother John Anik and I have 4 entries, right? He was busy calling a boxing fight on Netflix, by the way, but we squeezed in our entries. So 3 on Baltimore, 1 on Arizona were our 4 entries. Had I known Joe Burrow was going to go down, maybe I wouldn't have had 75% of my entries on Baltimore.
Fair enough. That's a good call.
What can you disclose about yours? Yeah.
I got through with 1 on the Chargers, lost 1 on the Broncos, guys. I was one of the 40 people that suffered that devastating Broncos loss with the field goal fiasco.
Wow.
I got by with a couple on I got by with 1 on the Cowboys, several on the Cardinals, 4 on the Cardinals, and a couple Ravens as well. So
leave that up there, Mike Jones.
It was wild.
Go ahead, Tony. Yeah,
it was wild.
It's just insane. And what I found myself doing, Tony, right? So keep in mind, if you look at the top 2 entries, Cardinals, Ravens, right? So yeah, I'm chalk. But I found myself rooting against my one entry on the Cardinals, 25% of my slate, because Chargers was gold. Yes, it was. Appreciate you, 2Shed84. But Tone, I'm like rooting against the field for those 5,000 plus entries to be eliminated, because I don't mind having 3 of my 4 there. That was what's fascinating to me. I wasn't on the Cowboys. So as I sat there, my brother was adamant that we not play the Cowboys. I would have played the Cowboys had I been on my own. But so much here, Tony, and I'll let you get in here. But just quickly, as I look at this board, shout out to the people on the Bills, because that was the no sweat game of the week. Shout out anyone on the Bills. We already shout out House on the Packers, only 66 there. And the Detroit Lions, man, I didn't quite expect that game to go down like that. So shout out to the people on Lions and the Bills. Tony, I'm sure you're chomping at the bit.
I'd say Rams as well. That was a first half was a little close, but by the end of that game, the Rams look like the much better team. So shout out to those people as well. The Cardinals and Cowboys, myself included, we earned that one, man. There was a lot of sweat and maybe even a little tears in that one. Let me break down for you how Sunday played out for me. So I'm at the book, right? And I just lost my Broncos entry. And I'm still recovering from the insane friggin' Cowboys-Giants game, which honestly we could spend an hour on. That was an insane game, Jason. I'm still recovering from that emotionally and mentally. Then I lose an entry on the Broncos, and I'm at a low. It hurts losing a survivor entry. It's like losing a best friend. And the way it went down with that bullshit penalty, the leverage call that you never see called ever, and especially in that type of a situation, you're frustrated, you're angry. And then I look over at the Cardinal game, a couple feet away on the screen, and I'm like, don't do this. And not only were the Panthers coming back, they got the backdoor cover against the point spread, by the way, very much almost won that game. But the Cardinals had so many effing injuries on defense. All 3 of their top cornerbacks were hurt. They had another defensive lineman hurt. So you're like, not only are the Panthers 40 yards away and have the momentum, but also the Cardinals are banged up. My confidence level at that point was at an all-time low. That would have been rough, because I had many entries on the Cardinals. My girlfriend has an entry with Cardinals as well. I won't say how many, because I don't want people to go to hunt for her entry. But I also had the $5,000 Westgate entry with the Cardinals too. So that was a scary fourth quarter for me, man. Oof.
You talk about the injuries on defense, and when you get down to the end of an NFL game and it's a 1-score game, the pass interference yellow flag looms.
Roughing the passer.
Right. It's just bananas. So, gosh.
Let me say this real quick, Jason, on that game. I don't want to get into conspiracy theories. I hate watching podcasts and people are like, the NFL is rigged. I think that is so annoying to hear. Nobody wants to hear that. But I will say this. As I'm watching that game, it seemed like the refs wanted Carolina to win. It felt that way being on the other end of it with all the damn ridiculous roughing the passers, etc. Not fun.
So let's touch base on the Giants-Cowboys game. Just a couple things quickly, right? So Brandon Aubrey kicks a 46-yard field goal as time expires. That was in overtime. He ties it with a 64-yarder at the end of regulation, right? But I just want to say this one statement, and then you can go off. I'm not rooting against my guy, Tony. I'm rooting for Tony's entries, but I got to be rooting against the 3,500 other folks in the field without an entry on the Cowboys. And I was there with my brother, John, exhaling after the boxing Saturday night. We're watching the Giants do some things. At one point, I actually said to Tony, didn't 10 entries get eliminated in Grandissimo? He's like, no, they didn't. I'm like, those were on the Cowboys. It felt that close. But the Giants just needed a field goal to win when Russell Wilson threw an ill-advised deep ball. And, it was intercepted by Donovan Wilson at the Dallas 30, 2 minutes left, and the rest was history. What was your experience like on that particular game?
Oh, man, it was so tough. So a couple moments come to mind. The Malik Neighbors deep touchdown with 30 seconds left or whatever in the fourth quarter. You think you're dead at that point. Even though you've got Aubrey on your sideline, you still are not feeling good at that point. And I was texting my buddy the whole game. I was like, I'm so scared of Malik Neighbors, because Malik Neighbors ended my survivor life last year. Remember?
I know.
So I'm like, I'm going to be victimized by the same guy 2 years in a row. This is
within like 4
awful.
Weeks, Tony.
Oh, seriously. Yeah. You look at 4 NFL weeks. Yeah. Right. Ridiculous, man. So, but the moment that I really started to panic and I got angry was about 2 to 3-ish minutes left in overtime when the Cowboys punted. Because I'm like, they're playing for the tie. Guys lose in Circa Survivor. They're playing for the freaking tie. Go for it on 4th and 5 with the 40-yard line, their own 40-yard line or whatever. I'm like, go for it. Win the game. It ended up working out okay, but that was a sweat, man. That was truly a sweat. And not only did I not like the decision to punt, the Cowboys defense looked awful.
Yes.
So I'm like, you're going to punt with 3 minutes left and you can't stop anybody. Good luck. It really felt like, they have those percentages on ESPN and stuff, like the percent likelihood of winning with the little line graphs. I'd like to see that for that Cowboys-Giants game because I feel like it was pretty damn close to 0 around the time they punted. It was scary.
Dude, and Brandon Aubrey, right? It's like, it's one thing to have a leg. It's another thing to have stones, right? It's okay if you can drill a 64, but in these spots, right? It would be fascinating for you and I to be together on some of these Sundays because, we stream it because you can be sure I'm rooting hard Giants given that I don't have any Cowboys entries. But what do you think about what I said? Like, I promise you, I was rooting against my one Cardinals entry. Okay. Yeah.
No,
right?
I've felt that before. I think a lot of Survivor players will empathize with that. Now, if it's 15% of your entries are going to get knocked out and 16% of the field is going to get knocked out, I don't think that's a fair trade. I'd rather have the bullets, right? But when you're talking about as much of a discrepancy as you're talking about, and it's even something to keep in mind when you're deciding on your picks. You got 4 picks, you got 10 picks, whatever. Maybe there's a game that you think 20% of the field is going to be on. You put one of your 10 entries on it. It gets knocked out. You lose 10% and 20%. It's a win equity wise, Yeah.
Yeah. And just quickly in terms of the Cardinals, right? You said on this program, perhaps saving the Cardinals for week 5 against Tennessee, home to Tennessee was perhaps a spot, so it's go ahead. Do you have something to say on that? Or
I don't know if I like that anymore. I'm so glad I got by with the Cardinals in week 2.
Fascinating.
Now I'm looking at this Cardinals team with 3 banged up cornerbacks and the way they just looked shitty in that 4th quarter. I'm like, I do have a couple entries left that I can use the Cardinals, and I don't even like that spot anymore. Things can change really quickly in Circa Survivor.
I agree. And we'd be remiss if we don't talk about the holidays every single time to some extent when we talk about this contest, right? And so we talk about, and for those of you that don't know, thanks, Mike Jones, always on top of it, Thanksgiving and Christmas Day are their own separate entities in terms of the Circa Survivor Contest, right? Cincinnati at Baltimore, Ravens look a lot more appealing on Thanksgiving Day. And what I'll say to you, Tony, is the one entry where I played at Arizona, I kept the Ravens available for myself because I had played Philadelphia with that entry. So I do have either Philly or Baltimore available in those 4 entries. But Tony, it really is interesting, right? How things shake up. How good does Minnesota look on Christmas right now, given what a difference a week makes, Tony?
You're not kidding. I mean, last week, I don't know if I said it on the show or not, but what I was feeling was, hey, Green Bay looks really good on Thanksgiving now because the Lions look like shit. Week
right.
1. Well, the Lions just destroyed the Bears. So I think what we're learning here, Jason, what we know, what we've always known, is it's too early to make these assumptions. So you have to have multiple routes. You have to have multiple paths. Let me humble us both and humble our entire audience real quick and remind you that this time last year, headed into week 3, look this up. The Philadelphia Eagles were underdogs against the New Orleans Saints.
Wow.
Isn't that wild? So whatever we're saying now is going to sound just as silly as the Saints are probably going to beat the Eagles in week 3 last year looking back. So we need to keep that in mind.
Stuff.
It's early right now. We don't know shit. We think we know shit. We don't know shit.
No, it's true. And I was talking to my proxy at football contest, Matty Simo, today, right? And he said in the first year of this contest, right, 35 entries split, right? I think they each maybe got 70 grand. So what I'll say to you, Tony, and I didn't prep you for this, but generally speaking, as someone who's sort of a little bit green, a little bit of a rookie in this contest, gosh, it feels like this is a recipe where you may get a lot of winners. Going to be tough to, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, that's a good. I've had people ask me how many people I think are going to be in this thing at the end, and obviously, when you have 2 weeks like this, where not a lot of people get eliminated, that over under, if you will, goes up a little bit. But I still think that these holiday weeks are much more gnarly than they've been in years past. So I think it's still going to be under 20 people. I really do. The carnage is coming. It always comes, for sure. We got comments rolling in here. Houston was down all game. Oh, that was another one, man. That Houston Tampa Bay game. I feel terrible for the people that were on Houston in that one. You get your hopes up. What is this one saying? These guys all on IR. Any general? It's a really good idea to keep an eye on injuries, guys. What Herbert on IR? Herbert's not on IR.
So
I'm
Tony,
not sure
when
what
you
they're
talk
saying.
about the Texans Bucks game, right? I mean, hard for me in a game that's somewhat close on paper in week 2 to have too much sympathy for anyone that sort of rolls the dice a little bit. It's one thing for House to play the Packers Thursday night and have that be not even nearly as close as the score indicated. That was a rout. But in some of these games, yeah, Houston was sort of fighting it all day. But, some of these games that are sort of close, right? I feel for people somewhat, but not in a situation like that. And what I will say, like the Pittsburgh Steelers, right, which was the biggest carnage of the week, 491, I believe, right?
Yep.
491 of the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? I was super bullish on the Steelers, Tony, this week. I lost a lot of money on the Steelers, but I didn't have them in Survivor. And you could say, oh, that fluky play where there was a special teams touchdown on the kickoff. Yes, but it wasn't as if the Steelers were a slam dunk to win that game if that one play doesn't happen. So I think on some of these higher risk games, there's an element of luck that works out both ways. And I think for a lot of us that are sitting here, the vast majority of us as we head into week 3, we feel a lot of luck has been obtained in week 1 and 2.
Yeah, good call. And Potato Commish, who I met at Circa a few weeks ago, does the math for us. He says over 20 survivors, 800,000 each. It's a nice big prize pool this year.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
all of our goal. I absolutely love it. Hey, one more takeaway from me for this week. The Atlanta Falcons are pretty damn good, man. They should have won week 1. I think I may have said this on the show last week. They had more yards. They had more yards, average play. They had more time of possession in week 1 against Tampa Bay. And then they looked damn good in week 2 against the Vikings. 6 sacks against J.J. McCarthy. The Falcons finally have a pass rush, and I think the Falcons are live to win that division. Now, they're behind in the tiebreaker because they lost straight up to Tampa Bay, but Falcons are a damn good team.
I agree. And Atlanta beat Tampa Bay twice last year. Tampa Bay still emerged out of there. So certainly they could emerge from that. I agree with you. That defensive line looked nasty getting after. And Bijan Robinson, to me, with the respect to Saquon Barkley, is right there with him. The way that guy moves on a football field is different than anyone, maybe even including Saquon for me. Those super young, fresh legs. This may be the peak of Bijan Robinson's prime. I think if Penix can figure it out, they could be really interesting.
Yeah, we're certainly going to talk about the Falcons because they've got a really interesting matchup. I think a lot of people are interested in what we have to say about that game. But are you ready to dive into week 1 with me, Jason? Oh, no, our joint entry. We got to update people on the joint entry. The joint entry survives. It gets us to week 3. We got bye this week with the chalk. So keep an eye out for this joint entry. The name is Champ. It's not in the Survivor Sweat Marketplace yet. It will be soon. Our goal here is to all win together. So there'll be an opportunity in a week or 2 for y'all to buy a piece of this with Jason and I, and we'll have some fun together.
Hey, as long as we get through, right? We're through 2 weeks so far. I love the joint entry. And one thing, Tony, which I love, we didn't talk about this, and I was glad we didn't, because it was my intention that we wouldn't talk about our joint entry in terms of week 3 until the show, right? So I believe on prior shows, we had sort of decided who we were going with, or maybe we had, but either way, I think we're going to have a very fresh conversation about where we take this thing in week 3. I'm looking forward to that, but Champ survives in advance.
Absolutely. Love seeing that. All right, let's jump into it, brother. Thursday night football, Miami, Buffalo. A lot of times these Thursday night games have no survivor implications, and this one certainly does. Big time. Bills are a massive favorite, 11.5-point favorite against Miami. Miami looks like shit. I mean, you tell me how you think they looked in that Patriots game after I run through the injuries here real quick, but I feel like the morale level on that team is at a big time low. Bills are definitely going to be without Matt Milano at linebacker, definitely going to be without defensive tackle Ed Oliver. Questionable Shaq Thompson, and Teron Johnson, a really good cornerback. Dolphins also have some injuries. Their starting safety whose name I can't pronounce, Darren Waller and Storm Duck are all going to be out for them. So also questionable Chop Robinson, Jalen Waddle, and Benito Jones, defensive lineman. So this is a game where if you're considering playing it, Circa does afford you the ability to play it right up until kickoff on Thursday if you don't have to worry about a proxy, if you're local at least. So this is a game where maybe you look at some inactives and throw a couple on the Bills. But yeah, what were your impressions of the Dolphins game, Jay? Because I got to be honest, of all the games on Sunday, that was probably the game that I watched the least.
Yeah, well, I had a very unique watching experience on Sunday, Tony, in the Durango Hotel. And frankly, if I'm being honest with you, I'm a businessman. I should have been in my hotel room with multiple screens, but I was down in the sports book. And if you had watched me, you might have thought something was wrong with me because I really couldn't figure it out. I'm a Patriots fan. And the Patriots game was the least attainable screen for my eyeballs, right? So I'm trying to catch as much of that, obviously with no sound. And the game was absolutely bananas, right? I was watching a lot of what Drake May was doing, certainly liked a lot of that. But yeah, I think the Dolphins is a fading ship. And I think it would be even if they had gotten through New England. New England is still a work in progress, you can be sure. So as I've thought about this contest, and I've thought a lot about the teams that I may want to fade, whether it's Browns, Saints, insert whatever name you want. The Dolphins are emerging at sort of the top of that list and facing arguably the best team in the NFL. What I struggle with a little bit here is that I think the Buffalo Bills are going to win a lot of games this season. Perhaps 15-2 is not, or 16-1, right? Even as a Patriots fan, how long is this team going to be undefeated, right? Week 4, Buffalo hosts New Orleans. That's appealing.
Off
Then
a bye.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
yeah, off Buffalo's bye. Yeah.
Buffalo, no, I thought they had the bye. I thought they were okay. They don't.
Maybe.
No, they don't host. They don't have. Well, it's an extra little bit of time off Thursday. It's a mini bye, if that's what you're referring to.
Gotcha.
Okay, but their bye is until week 7 before going at Carolina. But either way, Buffalo's schedule, well documented, is a piece of cake. So what I was going to ask you was, yeah, I really am going to, it's going to be hard for me not to insert Buffalo in one of my 4 entries or to convince you on the joint entry, but I see so much future value on this team that I would love to make it through week 3 without using Buffalo. Your thoughts?
Well, so the reason I thought it was off a bye is because they have another cupcake matchup off a bye later that I got it confused with. They play at Carolina off of their week 7 bye. So To your point, there are so many opportunities to use this team moving forward. In fact, 3 of the next 7 weeks after this week, they are the biggest favorite on the board. One of those other weeks, they're the second biggest favorite on the board. So that just tells you how much future value the Bills have. Arguably the most future value of any team in the NFL. So if I only have one team, one entry in Circa Survivor, I'm not putting it on the Bills because they just have too much future value. I'd rather use the Bills during a week when there's less ownership percentage because people burned them this week against the Dolphins and people ended up burning them the following week. I'd rather use them later. But let me throw this out there. In a sharper pool like Circa Survivor, a lot of people are thinking the same thing, aren't they, Jay?
Yep.
A lot of people are thinking the same exact thing. So maybe that depresses the ownership percentage here compared to some standard pools out there.
Yep.
So it's an interesting thing. Everybody wants to be like House last week, getting by on the Packers. It feels really good to get an entry through on Thursday. It makes you relax a little bit, and you can kind of have more guts on Sunday if you got an entry or 2 through.
So this may feel like a hard question to answer, but for those that took Buffalo last week against the Jets, you certainly feel good that you didn't sweat. Certainly a sharp play, if you will, but you don't have them anymore, right? So I do think, I really liked the Bills not to give that Ravens game back at traveling to MetLife Stadium. But based on the future value, I barely looked at them in week 2. And I'm not in too different a spot here, but I find it so difficult to imagine Miami getting it right here in week 3 that it's hard to ignore,
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's hard to imagine the Dolphins bouncing back in this spot on a short week on the road in Buffalo, a place they haven't won. You can fact check me on this. I believe since 2021, they haven't won. I don't think they've beat the Bills, period, on the road or at home since 2021. So it's hard to imagine them bouncing back in this spot, a team that a lot of people are speculating their head coach might be out the door really soon.
Yep.
Division games, always a little scary because of that familiarity, but I think the Bills feel like a pretty darn secure game this week. Just maybe you want to save them for the reasons that we mentioned.
Gotcha.
All right. Moving on. We want to hear from one of our sponsors here, Survivor Sweat, real quick. If you're in Circa Survivor, you have to go to the marketplace at survivorsweat.com. You can shop for entries that other people have registered or sell a percentage of your entry. Get knocked out early and suffering from FOMO? Head over to survivorsweat.com today and see which entries are available for sale. So
Dude,
Jason, I went over
yeah.
to the marketplace before this show, like minutes before this show. And I know Mike can pull up what I saw because I took a little screenshot. There is a small, see that second one from the bottom? There is a small chunk of Grandissimo available on the Survivor Sweat marketplace. There's several chunks for as low as $79 or $100 if you guys want to get a piece of a Circa Survivor entry and enjoy the ride. Of course, if you're buying a small piece like that, you're going to have no say in the entry, but it can be a hell of a ride, and you'll know who you're on every week because you get the name of the entry. So head on over to survivorsweat.com if you guys want to buy a piece. If you're interested in selling, as you can see, do the math there. I mean, you got entries up there for almost 3 times what they're worth. I don't know if they're selling for that or not. I'm not sure, but head on over to survivorsweat.com and check out their marketplace.
Dude, the Grandissimo, just to get a little tickle on that contest, I tell you what. But I love Survivor Sweat. They are the home of the champ entry, which will rise as champ from Last Man Standing podcast. I'm just telling you, it's going to happen. All right, moving on. 1:00 games. Atlanta at Carolina. Spread is 5.5. I told you I didn't care about spreads, but I kind of do. I see this at 5.5. Certainly, I see other spots on the schedule where I wouldn't consider using Carolina here, and I see other spots on the schedule where I like Atlanta. So this was a quick pass for me. Your thoughts, Tony?
I'm very interested in the Falcons in this spot. The Falcons finally have a good pass rush. The Panthers are going to be without 2 offensive linemen, their starting guard and the starting center. If you go to like fan message boards and stuff, Panthers fans believe that this new center that's coming in, Cade Mays, is actually going to be an upgrade for them, that it's addition by subtraction. But regardless, they're thinner on the offensive line, and they're facing a team that had 6 sacks last week. So that is a bit of a mismatch for me. The Falcons might be without Terrell, their cornerback, so keep an eye on him, this week in practice with the inactives and stuff. I think road games in the division are always dicey. You always got to be a little bit weary of them. But I want to point out this stretch that the Falcons have from weeks 8 to 13. I found this out today, Jason, to your point earlier about how quickly things change in Circa Survivor. I didn't think the Falcons were a team I even wanted to use in Circa Survivor before these last 2 weeks, right? Now, all of a sudden, they're moving up my power rankings. And I want to point out that from weeks 8 to 13, they have Miami, New England, Indy, maybe not, New Orleans, and the Jets. I would argue 5 of those 6 weeks you will consider using the Falcons if they're as good as I think they are right now.
And if I'm mistaken, unless I'm mistaken, I think you missed home to Carolina in week 11, right? So that's what gives me pause this weekend, right? Yeah. Is that week 8 home to Miami, week 11 home to Carolina. They get the bye in week 5. And 0-2 Carolina 0-2. That scares me a little bit, right? Because 0-3, you can't really come back from 0-3. So perhaps gun back against the wall, but zig when others zag. So I hear your energy on the ATL a little bit.
You're wise to point out the 0-2 thing. I was going to save this note for later, but since you brought it up, this is from Steve Makinen over at VSiN. Teams who start 0-2 going against 1-1 teams, which is this situation right here, in week 3 since 2010, they're 31-27 straight up and 40-17-1 ATS. That's a 70.2% clip. So you'd think the 0-2 team would have a losing record against the 1-1 team, but they actually have a winning record. So be wary fading these 0-2 teams against 1-1 teams this week. That trend goes back to 2010. But again, to recap here, I am very interested in the Falcons. I'm not going to shove all in on it, but if Mike, if you can pull up the projections from Survivor Atlas, this is one of the reasons why I like Atlanta. And Survivor Atlas is pretty darn accurate over there. If we're going to get, even if we get 10% on Atlanta and they're light, that's still a pretty low number when you're going against what is arguably the worst team in the NFL. Certainly one of the 5 worst teams in the NFL. And it's coming in at 6 to 10% maybe. That alone should make you curious, I think, about the Falcons, even if you don't love the matchup,
So I love how you turn the page so quickly on the Carolina Panthers sort of breathing down our necks as we had entries in week 2 on the Arizona Cardinals, right? For me, and it really is, I laugh about it, but it is important to be able to turn the page because for me, gosh, Carolina with a chance to win that football game is so fresh in my mind, right? Arizona one week, Atlanta the next. It's like, give me no part of that. But your points are very well taken.
Yeah, there's no loyalty in Circa Survivor. You're rooting for one team. The next week, you're rooting for the exact same team to lose. You're rooting against your team. You're rooting against the Patriots. I'm rooting against the 49ers. It happens, man. It happens. Moving on here, Packers at Browns. Interesting one, Jason, because the point spread's pretty high here. You can see 8.5. I saw it at 7.5 at one point. This is an interesting spot for the Packers. They're playing at an elite level right now. I think you'd have to agree with me. They're a top 5 team. At least they're playing like a top 5 team in the NFL right now. That defense looks different with Micah Parsons going up against a consensus bottom 5 team in the league in Cleveland. Packers do have holiday implications against Detroit. Week 9 against Carolina. Week 11 against the Giants. Let me just start there with those 3 options, Jason. And of course, there's a lot of other implications. What other options do I have those weeks? But would you rather play the Packers at the Browns or week 9 versus Carolina, week 11 versus the Giants? Which matchup you like better?
I probably would go hosting Carolina week 9, but Tony, I know we're going to disclose less as time goes on, but this Green Bay Packers off a week 5 bye home to Jake Browning and the Cincinnati Bengals looks
That's
very
sneaky.
different. So yeah, so I hear you, and I know as we go, you're right.
Sneaky.
Maybe you had that on the back burner for a reason, but that jumps out at me. Certainly, I like them to go in and take care of the Browns. But again, with the Browns, me betting on the Bengals week 1 in Survivor against the Browns has scarred me, has given me bias. And all you sharps would say, get rid of that bias and play the Packers at the Browns.
I'll tell you 2 more games that we didn't even mention, and this just speaks to how much future value the Packers have. They also have 2 games against Chicago after Thanksgiving. After Thanksgiving, when you're running low on teams and you're getting a little desperate because you've used up a lot of your good teams, if you can manage to save the Packers for after Thanksgiving, what's that ownership percentage going to be after Thanksgiving when they play on Thanksgiving? It's going to be extremely low. So I like the idea. You know, if I've got 9 entries left in mine, you know, on my DD3's revenge entry, I like the idea of maybe putting one on the Packers. Maybe we'll see. But
and Tony, real quick, like, doesn't Micah Parsons make you sleep better Saturday night if that's a selection?
Yeah,
you know,
he makes the secondary better on that team. I mean, he's a game changer, and it sounds like common sense, of course, when you bring in an all pro player like that. But the Packers are immediately a Super Bowl contender, and when you have a Super Bowl contender like that against the Giants, Panthers, 2 games against the Bears, and Thanksgiving implications, that's a lot of good reasons to save the Packers here. And I want to take this opportunity, Jason, to make a bigger point about these holidays on Thanksgiving. Because we've made the point on this show before that you want to have more than one Thanksgiving team available because shit happens. Quarterbacks get hurt, etc., right? But even if you've got 2 options, that might not be enough, right? Let's just imagine a world for a moment where we roll into Thanksgiving and all the options on Thanksgiving are like 1 or 2 points off on the point spread. Let's just say that happens, which is totally possible, by the way. You got a 3-point spread here, 4-point spread here. If the Packers are owned, I'm just going to use hypotheticals here, by 10% of people, and the Chiefs are owned by 80% of people, and the Ravens are owned by 70% of people, the Packers are the play on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Just based off the ownership percentages. And we can't predict today how many people are going to own the Packers, Chiefs, Eagles, and Ravens on Thanksgiving. So that's yet another reason to save as many of these Thanksgiving teams as you can in your pocket, because we don't know the ownership percentages. And if we roll into Thanksgiving and one of these teams is only owned by 8% of the freaking field that's alive, which, by the way, is like so impossible to try to predict. Don't even bother trying. At that point, you're going to feel differently about who you want to roll with on Thanksgiving. So have more than 2 options on Thanksgiving if you can. Now, I know that's easier said than done because we have a survival instinct. We want to survive, and we want to take a nice, comfortable favorite like the Packers appear to be against the Browns. But just keep that in mind. Just because you have a team or 2 that you feel comfortable with in Thanksgiving, it might not be enough.
I just still can't believe that there was nothing resembling a bloodbath, right? When I went to the Canelo Crawford fight, it was like the opposite of MMA. The cut men weren't needed. There was no blood the whole night, right? The fact that the Circa Survivor got through these 2 weeks with almost no carnage, It's going to shock me if it drops this week. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel as though we may go on a run here where it's not going to surprise me if there are a lot of people in this contest for a long time.
Yeah, I don't know what to expect at this point because I've been in survivor pools before where you have a couple weeks like this, not usually at the beginning, but like this back to back. And it almost, I think, lulls you into a sense of complacency. You're like, I'll just keep taking these big favorites. What can go wrong? You forget the pain. You forget how unpredictable the NFL can be. Do we need some reminders? Ravens versus Raiders last year that nobody saw coming. I mean, these things do happen. There's no sure thing in the NFL. Not a single game on the board is a sure thing. So maybe we need to remind ourselves of that, even though we've had a couple of, I don't want to say easy weeks, right? Because they haven't been easy, but low carnage weeks.
So from Pool Genius, at Pool Genius on Twitter, great handle. NFL favorites of 4.5+ points are 12-0 straight up this season. Dating back to week 11 of last year, 52-8 straight up. Chalk is coming through. We talked a little bit last year how a lot of favorites sort of against the spread for a couple years now in a row. That's sort of been the trend. But either way, I don't expect Green Bay to lose here. I also don't expect any of my 4 entries to be on the Packers.
All right, moving on here. We've got Texans at Jaguars. Christian Kirk is trending toward playing for the first time this year for Houston. I think that offense is going to look a lot different with him in the lineup. Revenge game for Christian Kirk against the Jaguars. Remember, the Jaguars traded him to the Texans. Interdivision trade. We don't see that too often. The Texans are 0-2. The Jaguars are 1-1. That fits that trend. I'm going to read it one more time because I think it's so fascinating from Steve Makinen over at VSiN. Teams that are 0-2 going against teams that are 1-1 in week 3 since 2010 are 31-27 straight up, 40-17-1 ATS. I think just anecdotally, sometimes I just like these 0-2 teams in this spot because they're playing with a desperation. So much of Survivor is figuring out how motivated are these guys going to be, whether it be because it's a short week and they're resting their injuries or whether it be a revenge game situation. I think you're going to see a pretty motivated Texans team here. But I'll also say this, Jay, I lost money on the Texans last week. I thought the Texans were going to beat the Bucs. So maybe you guys shouldn't be listening to me when I talk about how the Texans are kind of a sneaky pick this week on the road against the Jaguars.
I feel like a lot of people lost money on the Texans last week, and I think they're a really difficult team to handicap. I lean in that direction, and a lot of it really is because of that 0-2 record and root and thinking maybe they get off the schneid, and I will say, I think Liam Cohen got into it a little bit with Trevor Lawrence on the sidelines, and sort of there was a little dust up there or whatever. And I don't mind those things. I like the phrase my uncle used to say, you got to break eggs to make an omelet. I don't mind that stuff, but for me, if I'm not playing that game in Survivor, but if I'm looking for sort of an edge there, I feel like Houston is still a well-run organization. It's a long season, right? So I lean Houston in that spot, not going to touch it. What do we got?
Got some comments rolling in here. This one says, keep getting cute, being contrarian. I don't know how he's saying this. Is he saying this sarcastically? Like, oh yeah, you keep getting cute. You wait and see what happens. F around and find out. Or is he saying like, maybe you should actually get cute and not be so chalky? I'm not sure how that was intended.
Well, Tony, what do you think has been cute?
I think referring to like a game like this, using the Texans in a spot like this would be getting cute.
Yeah,
because you're maybe you're overthinking it. Maybe you're trying too hard to be on an island when you've got a shitload of big favorites this week. You got the Bills, you got Seattle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I agree with that wholeheartedly. If that's the take, talking about getting cute there with Texans, absolutely. I tell you, I like the Texans in the game because I love the National Football League. But in terms of Survivor, yeah, I'm with the commenter.
Randy chimes in to our point earlier about how sometimes you root against your own loyalties in Circa Survivor. He says, I live in Washington State, but he's rooting big for the Seahawks loss in week 3. Sounds like he won't be on Seattle. We'll get to that game here in a little bit.
Yes, we will.
Next up,
yeah, go ahead.
Next up, Bengals Vikings, a battle of the backup quarterbacks. We've got Carson Wentz coming in for JJ McCarthy. This is going to be so fascinating. So I lived in Minnesota for a while, really close to the North Dakota border. And they love them some Carson Wentz up there because he went to NDSU. Trey Lance and Carson Wentz. So I love that Wentz is playing for the Vikings right now against the Bengals backup quarterback, Jake Browning. And Jake Browning is probably one of the better backup quarterbacks in the NFL. He looked really good. I mean, is it crazy to say that at times he actually looked better than Joe Burrow? I'm not saying he is better than Joe Burrow, but that offense looked better than Joe Burrow last week. I think the Bengals are going to be okay. I kind of like the Bengals earlier this week at +3.5. I can't trust the Vikings this week. I think some people will, though, Jay. I think there's going to be some people who realize that Bengals defense is bad. The Bengals offensive line is bad, and it's a backup quarterback. And that Vikings roster, besides Wentz at least, is really good. I think we're going to see a surprising number of people on the Vikings this week.
Gosh, that's so interesting. Carson Wentz is one of those guys that I keep a very safe distance from. The type of some of the things he does with the football in certain dangerous positions on the football field just really scare me. So for me, it's an easy layoff in terms of the Survivor Contest, but I really actually like the Bengals in this spot, despite some of the things that you've talked about, Tony, in terms of, yes, they can't protect the quarterback, but I do think Jake Browning, I believe he was 4-3 as a starter, if I'm not mistaken. I may be wrong, but I do like the familiarity there and him. So, there are certain situations where there is a little bit of plug and play. I think the roster has some issues, but Carson Wentz tends to rub people the wrong way. Like Justin Jefferson has been great when things weren't going well, even week 1 with JJ McCarthy. But that Carson Wentz guy, he has a little Russell Wilson to him where the locker room doesn't always, right? He sometimes throws off the mojo of the room. And so for me, I hope there are people on the Vikings here because I think the Bengals are a live dog.
Jay, real quick, do you believe the JJ McCarthy conspiracy theories that he's not really hurt? There's a video on Twitter of him like the last play of the game rolling out. He looks completely fine, no limp or anything like that, and all of a sudden never touched after that point, and he's got an ankle injury. A lot of people are saying maybe it was a performance issue, but they want to protect his ego a little bit and call it an injury. Do you buy that?
It's really interesting, right? There were moments on the sideline where Kevin O'Connell, who has as good a disposition as any head coach in the league for my money, there were moments on the sideline where he looked super irate with this young kid. And you talked about week 2 and just overreaction. I think I heard you on another, just talk about the overreaction. What can be week 2? And gosh, JJ McCarthy, I had anointed him, right? He was in the MVP conversation and this dumb head after that week. So it really is interesting. I'm not a conspiracy theory guy in general, so I would probably vote no on there, but I think it can't hurt. He had some moments, but he didn't have time, man. I put him more on the offensive line than him.
We got someone saying if Kevin O'Connell can't make you better, you might be a bust. I have to say that's absolutely true, but it is early. It's early in this guy's career, so let's give him a little bit of a chance.
Yeah.
One other note: the Vikings, week 5, they play the Browns. They play the Browns overseas. And they're already overseas because they have back-to-back games. The Browns come in on back-to-back road games. So just in terms of a spot, week 5 is an excellent spot game for Minnesota. And we'll have a couple weeks to see if you can trust Carson Wentz in that spot, or maybe McCarthy's healthy by then. We'll see. But just keep that in mind. The Vikings also have games against Chicago and the Giants still left on their schedule as well. So there are some good spots to use the Vikings here, but it is an opportunity to, be on a low-owned team this week.
It's a great point you bring up about the Vikings in week 5. And, so that game, it's followed by a bye, and then they host Philadelphia. So you got to all right, you got to get this one, boys. Get this one. You got to buy in Philadelphia. So that makes a ton of sense. I like your thinking there.
Good call. Before we get to the Steelers-Patriots game, if you guys can do us a favor, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button, drop a comment. If you're watching on Twitter, hit like, hit retweet. We really appreciate that. We are available on Spotify. We're available on Apple Podcasts as well. You can subscribe on those platforms as well. Drop us a comment. Any sort of engagement helps us. It helps get this show out to other viewers. So we really appreciate you guys hitting thumbs up. Ooh, we got a new sound effect there.
We got all sorts of stuff, all sorts of juice here for you, Tone. So
go ahead.
Yeah, as we move on to Pittsburgh at New England, I wanted to start here because you can be, as a New England Patriots fan, you can be sure I'm not touching this in the contest. I was so bullish on the Steelers last week. I felt foolish. Really not in a contest, though, so I'm cool there. But I guess your thoughts on this game, who do you like? I'd love my P-men to get to 2-1.
It's interesting, right? I think the Steelers were a really sneaky play week 1, and it worked out. Then they were a really sneaky play in week 2, and it didn't work out at all. And I feel like they're a really sneaky play in week 3 as well. But for me, I got to see how these injuries shake out. You've got Derek Harmon, their rookie defensive tackle, who I think is going to be really good. He's limited in practice. He might be playing for the first time this season. That's going to be a huge upgrade for the Steelers defense. Alex Highsmith, Joey Porter did not practice today. For me, if those guys are in there, Harmon, Highsmith, and Porter, you absolutely may see me with an entry on the Steelers. Also worth mentioning, Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis, cornerbacks for the Patriots, limited in practice today. We've talked on this show about how important Christian Gonzalez is, so important to that defense. So I can't make a decision and give my opinion without knowing the answers to those questions moving forward. Future value moving forward, 2 games against Cleveland. Nice to have that in your pocket if you're on the Steelers. They've got a game against Miami. They've got a game against Chicago as well. So some decent future value for the Steelers here too.
Really good points there. Christian Gonzalez jumps off the screen when you're watching a Patriots football game. His name, you hear his name all the time, and I don't expect he's going to be there in week 3. Hamstring, frankly, as a Patriots fan, I'd like him to sit as long as possible. He would move the needle for me as a fan in terms of my confidence in that game. Some of these games, I know week 3 to call something a big game, may seem trite, but gosh, for Aaron Rodgers, right? I know it's a long season, right? But you have that big emotional win at New York, then you come back home and it doesn't work out for you. Patriots, I just think it's a very interesting spot for both teams because I think that both teams maybe have a similar ceiling this season, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm fascinated to see. I think we're going to see a few people on the Steelers this week. Not a lot, not like more than 1 or 2%, but I see the logic in wanting to take a team like the Steelers this week. I do think if ever there was a week, Jay, where you wanted to try to find an island and get cute, so to speak, I think it's this week because we haven't talked about it yet, but I think there's going to be around 40% of the field on Seattle. And I think you might see 20% of the field on the Bucs. And when you're talking about 60% of the field on 2 teams, they even mentioned the Bills as well, on 2 or 3 teams, man, if one of those goes down and you're sitting on an island and you get cute, that feels real nice. That's all of a sudden your entry skyrockets in value and you're over on the Survivor Sweat marketplace trying to sell a chunk of it. So this is the week to try to figure something like that out, I would argue.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And as we continue, there are certainly other chalky selections as well that we haven't even talked about. All right.
True.
Moving on, Rams at Philadelphia. Spread Philly -3.5. I know I'm a broken record talking about the playoff game last season. I believe if not contested in the snow, the Rams had a great chance to win that game and end up hosting the NFC Championship game. I wouldn't go near it from a survivor standpoint, so I'm not going to say anything further. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I honestly don't have much to say about this game, Jay. Like very, very slight chance of rain in this one. Dallas Goedert's expected to be back here for the Eagles. I think both teams have a lot of good future value moving forward. The Eagles, of course, have the holiday implications. So I want absolutely nothing to do with this game. I would say this game and the Lions-Ravens game are probably going to be the 2 least selected games. That's just my prediction when we see those entry counts come out on Saturday.
It is so interesting. You talk about looking at this league through a survivor lens and these huge games. The Kansas City Philadelphia game this weekend.
Yeah.
I could argue I was less interested in that big game, right? Right. This Rams Philly game. It's like, oh, no survivor. Oh, give me where's the blowout? Where's the blowout that I can see how I'm going to sweat this blowout?
It's so true. It's so true. Just real quick to that point, I'm at the book on Sunday watching the games, and, they only have the volume on one game. And, of course, that was the game on the 4 o'clock slate. It's in the middle. The volume's loud on it. And I've got my phone and my headphones so that I can watch the Arizona-Carolina game because all of a sudden that means way more to me than this marquee game the NFL is really trying to push and trying to sell. So Survivor does funny things to your fandom, as we've said in this show like 3 times already. It's wild.
Well, and I'm out in Vegas and I'm sitting on a Carolina Panthers +7 ticket that I almost ripped up because Cardinals were right. That's the irony, right? So thrilled to get that and the Arizona through, but that's just this league. It's like I'm about to rip up thinking they're not going to even cover the 7 and they had a chance to win the football game.
Congratulations on hitting your middle, buddy.
We'll take it.
Jets at Bucks. 40% chance of thunderstorms in this one. Certainly keep an eye on the weather. We've talked about how a rainy, sloppy field can really be a nightmare for people in Circa Survivor. I think the Bucks are going to be a very popular Circa Survivor selection this week. Mike, if you can pull up Survivor Atlas's projections again, I want to say Atlas is projecting them at 19%. They're going to be popular this week.
Yeah, Tone. I mean, I think, go ahead.
I'll just say short week for Tampa. Cansey is out for the year, their defensive tackle. They're definitely going to be without Godecki, their tackle. They might be without Tristan Wirfs, their other tackle. but it didn't seem to matter that much, or at least as much as I thought it would, against the Texans, who have a really, really good front seven. The Bucs are going to be popular for a lot of reasons. Not only because of what the point spread is, you see a touchdown favorite right there. Not only because their future value isn't as high as teams like the Bills, who are an option this week, but there's bias here. People just saw the Bucs look really good in a primetime game.
Yep.
And I think that might inflate the Bucs numbers, maybe even over 20% this week. We'll see.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think could be up over 20%. You know, Baker Mayfield got banged up. He's sort of limping up to the podium there. You know, I do think what you said earlier about Atlanta, I do think Atlanta is going to be very competitive this season. And when I look at the latter half of the Tampa Bay schedule, I think there are a couple home games against division foes, New Orleans, week 14, Carolina to close out the year, week 18. I know we got to forget about week 18. But I see a little bit of future value with the Tampa Bay team that I think is probably going to be playing for something very close to the end of the season. But I find it very hard to believe. Who's playing quarterback for the New York Football Jets this weekend? Not going to be Justin
Tyrod
Fields.
Taylor.
Yeah, there you go. So that would scare me far more. If Justin Fields was playing, I'd be looking harder at Tampa Bay. Tyrod Taylor. Hey, Tyrod, why don't you get in the way of the Survivor thing for us a little bit, perhaps?
I mean, I won't waste people's time. I have so many stories about losing Survivor entries against backup quarterbacks. I have so many stories. So don't just assume because you got a backup quarterback, you're safe. A little bit of information on Tyrod Taylor. He was 7 for 11 with 56 yards and a touchdown, no interceptions in garbage time last week against the Bills. His last start, January of 2023, he beat the Eagles. He was 23 of 32 with 297 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. So it is a step down from Justin Fields. I don't think it's that much of a step down. I think in some people's minds, it's panic time. Oh, the starting quarterback's gone. I think Tyrod Taylor is an experienced, serviceable quarterback, and I don't think the Jets' offense is going to look that much worse without him. He can run a little bit too, man. He's not a Justin Fields, but he's got some wheels for sure.
Well, and if some of the other, 11 guys on the defensive side of the ball want to make some plays too, it could be an interesting day given the Bucs injuries. And Tyrod Taylor, I understand, is not a game manager, but can probably manage the game better than Justin Fields can. So maybe potentially could be a little bit of a step up. I like Justin Fields more than most, but I think some people would argue, Tony, that that's a step up rather than a step back.
Jason, if you ask me what team in the NFL I'm the most confused by, like I just don't have a solid grasp of how good or not they are, I think it's the Jets, because they really blew me away week 1. I was so impressed with how they looked against that really good Steelers defense. And then they looked terrible against the Bills. I need a third game. I need a third data point to know, like, is this Jets team? And it's going to be tough without Fields. I guess I probably won't know after that too, because we'll be without their starting quarterback. But this Jets team is one that I don't think they're good, but I don't have that much conviction in that statement.
I hear you. Gosh, it's Tampa. It's like you start on the road, and I know they probably should have lost to Atlanta, but then you win both road games, then you come home. I just, WSDJ, I hear you. Maybe the Steelers not that good. I think we will see. The defense certainly hasn't been as advertised.
Yeah, we'll find out this week against the Patriots. If the Steelers look like they did against Seattle, against the Patriots, that becomes a very true statement, and maybe panic time if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers bettor or fan for sure. Moving on here. What do we got up next? Colts, Titans, 31% chance of storms in this one. I think this is one that's going to be sneaky popular, not like 10% or anything, but like of those lower games, I think you could see like 2 or 3% here on the Colts. The Colts hype train is really starting to pick up,
isn't it?
And I ask you, I'm still bitter about that Broncos Colts game last week. If they don't get that call, is the Colts hype train still going nuts? If the Colts are 1-1 right now?
Exactly. I'm so glad you asked that question. That question could be asked so many times in different circumstances around this league, right? When you look at that record, and I think the point you brought up earlier with the tweet about 0-2 versus 1-1, how much are we really reacting? I couldn't agree with you more. And when you talked about the hype train, you make me laugh because, what are we even seeing here? You think Danny Dimes week 3 of the Indianapolis experiment, no matter how much I like Danny Dimes, not a chance I would go there. I also think Cam Ward has had some moments, and coaches are coaching for their jobs potentially in Tennessee. So I don't want to go that far. I think a little bit of a longer leash there for Callahan, but I think Tennessee, it would not surprise me if Tennessee pulled the upset in that game, despite I do believe in a lot of what they're doing with the Colts.
Yeah, Tennessee makes me nervous here. I mean, they haven't looked great, but they've played two of the best teams in the NFL. Definitely two of the best defenses in the NFL, in Denver and the Rams, all that firepower they have in their front seven. So maybe the Titans aren't as bad as we think. I still maintain the Titans might be an 8-win team this season.
Wow.
That would not surprise me. I think they're a lot better than people think. And they scare me at home in this spot as a desperate 0-2 team. So I would not trust the Colts at all. You and I are on the same page there.
I love it.
Raiders, Commanders.
Yep.
We're not going to know until Friday, or maybe we won't even know by then. But that's the earliest that Jaden Daniels might be at practice. Marcus Mariota is the backup there in Washington, playing the Raiders. You've got to love this spot, just the spot here for the Commanders, because they're on extra rest. The Raiders are on short rest. These don't happen very often where you've got a Thursday. One team played last on Thursday. The other team last played on Monday. Great spot for the Commanders, but not if they don't have their starting quarterback. But do you make an argument and say, like I tried to last week with the 49ers and Brock Purdy, hey, if you don't play Brock Purdy, that makes me like the 49ers more in Survivor. If the Commanders don't play Jaden Daniels, there'll be less people on the Commanders in Survivor. They're going up against the Raiders, which you could argue is one of the worst teams in the NFL. Low ownership percentage. Maybe this is an opportunity in a phenomenal rest spot here for the Commanders to throw an entry or two at Washington in a week where you're trying to get yourself on a little island.
Gosh, you took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say you had talked about being on an island and maybe this is the spot to do so. And I think there's a great chance that we know right now Mariota is going to be starting. I would be shocked if Jaden Daniels ends up starting. And I don't think that's necessarily a huge drop off. We're not in the postseason yet. We're not. I understand, the magnitude of this game, I don't think is going to be too much for Mariota. There was a production meeting with the television crew or someone that typically was scheduled for Jaden Daniels. Mariota went to it instead of him already. I believe that was today. I will say that did happen once in the past, and Jaden Daniels did end up starting that Sunday. But either way, I think you're getting Mariota, but I hear you. And I also think the Raider, Geno Smith, the Sam Darnold, Geno Smith sort of, where Sam Darnold takes his place in Seattle. I think both of those guys, things can rear their ugly heads with those guys. Geno Smith looked disastrous out there. So fading him doesn't scare me either.
Yeah, and you talk about the drop-off from Jaden Daniels to Marcus Mariota. This injury for Jaden Daniels is a leg injury. I believe a knee, but it's definitely a leg injury. And his mobility is such a huge part of his game. So what's the drop-off between an injured, less mobile Jaden Daniels and Marcus Mariota? Again, opportunity to get on an island here. It's gambling, though. You're gambling here in this game, especially if Jaden Daniels plays and you don't know if he's 100% or not. But great spot for Washington. It's hard to ignore that.
Well, and one thing I said to my brother as we were talking about our Survivor picks this week is something you said to me about can you wake up Monday morning, and if you put all your entries on the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson at home to Cleveland, can you live with yourself if you do that, right? So I don't think I could live with myself if Marcus Mariota takes me out of this contest. So
very good point, especially when there's all these other great options this week. Some we haven't even talked about. Some we already have, like the Bills.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the end of the 1 o'clock slate. We'll get to the 4 o'clock games, but not before we have a word from our friends at Race Oracle. Attention racing fans. If you want an edge at the track, you need Race Oracle. This subscription service uses advanced AI modeling built on over 200,000 historical races, crunching hundreds of data points from weather and track conditions to jockey history and speed ratings. Race Oracle gives you proprietary win percentages, Kelly betting strategies, and live odds tracking, covering every race in North America plus the UK and Ireland, so you can bet around the clock with confidence. Don't guess, predict smarter. Subscribe today and start betting with data, not luck. I've said this on previous shows, but literally our partnership with Race Oracle has gotten me back into the horse racing game, which I think is a good thing. And I've said on every show, the way their system is constructed, it allows me to be organized with my horse racing betting, which I've never been before. Gulfstream down here is close to me. I'm planning a trip with my daughter. So appreciate everyone over at Race Oracle. All right, Tone. 4 o'clock games.
Broncos, Chargers.
Yep.
I need to just put a big blanket over this game when we talk about it because I have Chargers bias. The Chargers have been great to me so far this season. I bet them plus 3.5 in week 1. Won another bet on them in week 2. I got a survivor entry through on week 2, Monday night this week. So I'm falling in love with this team. I'm smitten with the LA Chargers. So keep me in check if I take things too far here, okay? But Justin Herbert is playing at an MVP level. He's actually risen. He went from 6th on the MVP odds boards up to 3rd this week, if anybody noticed that, only behind Allen and Lamar Jackson. And he's actually got better stats than Josh Allen. Justin Herbert, you could argue he's playing the best quarterback play in the entire league right now. I'm seeing Quentin Johnston catching bombs for the Chargers. They've got some weapons on this offense. Even though Hampton didn't have a great game the last game, I love the way that guy runs. He seems to fall forward with every single run. Powerful runner. I like the Chargers here in this spot, man. I like the Chargers here in this spot because they're rolling and the Broncos aren't. We see this every year. Some teams start fast, some teams start slow. We've talked ad nauseum about how the Bengals are slow starters. The Chargers have hit the ground running. The Denver Broncos have not. They're not playing their best football. No Dre Greenlaw or Engram in practice today. They've got another linebacker whose name I can't pronounce, starts with an S, who's out. So they've got cluster injuries at the linebacker position. No Khalil Mack for the Chargers, so keep that in mind as well. But just from a momentum standpoint, the fact that LA is at home, the Broncos are struggling, Chargers don't have a ton of future value moving forward. I think this is a very, I don't know if I'll call it sneaky because I think a lot of people are thinking this as well. But I think this is a very intriguing spot here for the Chargers. You might see me have an entry on the Chargers back-to-back weeks.
I like that. I agree with that assessment. I don't love going against Sean Payton, especially after having 2 sort of not great weeks where the first week wasn't great, but you get a win. And then last week was sort of clunky and you didn't emerge victorious. But I'm really bullish on this Chargers team. And as we talk about future value, and I think about a team like the Buffalo Bills or the Baltimore Ravens, horses that I want to have some horses in the race later in the game. The LA Chargers to me look like maybe a horse that I want to sort of have and hang on to. This is not necessarily a survivor spot for me, but I'm with you. I'm bullish on the Chargers and like them quite a bit. It would shock me if that number doesn't cross to 3 at least, and maybe even get to 3.5 by kickoff. I love LA there.
And by the way, I think this is the second time this season that we've talked about the Broncos immediately after the Race Oracle ad, which I love.
Tone.
I love. It just happens, man. It just happens.
You know what? Yeah. See, I'm making a note. It feels like we got to tie that Race Oracle to the Denver Broncos
every week. In between the Colts, whatever the Colts play, Colts and Broncos put it in
exactly. Colts. Hey, folks at Race Oracle, I hope your ad placement. I hope you're okay if we tweak your ad placement a little bit. We're going to tie it to Indianapolis and Denver.
I love it. I love it. Next game. This might be the game that a lot of people are tuning in to hear us talk about because this is the big linchpin this week in Circa Survivor. Saints at Seahawks. I'm going to give you guys an argument for each side of this one. If you want some arguments for why you should take Seattle here, I think Seattle will have the best unit on the field. Their defense is the best unit on the field. Not a ton of future value for the Seahawks moving forward. This is probably the best time to use the Seahawks all season long. They have a couple opportunities against bad teams late in the season, but they're on the road. This is the best time to use Seattle. I don't think that's debatable. They're 7.5-point favorites at home in a non-division game. Great spot to use them. You're going up against a quarterback who's never won a game. Some really, really good reasons to use Seattle. Some reasons not to use Seattle. I think they're going to be the most popular selection in Circa Survivor. I think upwards of maybe even more than 40% of people will be on them potentially. We did this poll. This is on our Twitter here. 398 people voted. I asked, which way are you leaning for Circa Survivor? And if you have more than one entries, which team will get the most of your entries? And you can see here, Seattle is running away with it. And obviously, that's a small sample size, 398 people. But we're seeing that with Survivor Atlas's projections as well. We're expecting a lot of people here on Seattle. So that's a reason not to use them because you can catch up on the field. Your entry can go way up in value if you get an upset there. Seattle has the 25th ranked offensive line, according to Pro Football Focus. Carl Anderson on the other side for the Saints leads the league in sacks. Just want to plant that seed. That could be a little bit of a mismatch that he can take advantage of. We know what Sam Darnold looks like under pressure, don't we?
We do.
Saw playoffs last season. Carl Granderson is the kind of guy, and Seattle has the kind of offensive line where he could potentially wreak havoc and take over that game. It's like the Cowboys-Giants game last week, man. I'm texting my buddy. I'm on the Cowboys, and I'm saying, Malik Neighbors is the only way we lose this game. That's the Giants' only path to victory. And I feel like the Saints' path to victory here is Carl Granderson wreaking havoc and making Sam Darnold have happy feet in this game. The other thing I want to point out, and I put this out on our Twitter, I think this surprised a lot of people. It surprised me when I saw it. Seattle's 4-9 straight up in their last 13 home games. What happened, Jason, to Seattle's home field advantage? The 12th man, the loudest. Remember, they used to do the decibels up on the scoreboard?
Yeah, right.
The loudest stadium in the NFL. All of a sudden, they're 4-9 straight up. They're better on the road lately than they are at home. I have no explanation for that, but it is what it is. So don't feel too comfortable with the fact that Seattle's home in this game against the Saints.
Really good stuff across the board. So there are 32 teams in the NFL, unless I'm mistaken, and the Survivor Contest is 18 weeks plus the 2 holiday weeks. So we got 20 weeks. So I am not required to play Sam Darnold at any point in this contest, right? And so I'm not gonna. If all you want to take Seattle, I hope you do. We'll be rooting hard for Nollins. But yeah, Tone, you talk about being able to live with yourself. And Sam Darnold won a lot of football games in Minnesota last season, but I can't live with myself if I lose in the Circa Survivor Contest on Sam Darnold. Therefore, this is not a hard decision for me this week.
Yeah, very good point. I also want to throw this out there. The 2 weeks that you could use Seattle, I said they don't have a lot of future value. This is the best spot to use them, and I stand by that. But I also want to throw this out there, a little devil's advocate. The 2 weeks that you could use them, week 17 at Carolina. We've talked on this show about how week 17, even though we don't like to plan that far ahead, this is staring at me. I don't want to plan that far ahead, but I have to because week 17 is so gnarly. That could be an opportunity where you say, I'm glad I saved Seattle for that point. Week 12, they're not one of the top 5 selections that week, but the teams above them, Baltimore, Detroit, Kansas City, Green Bay, and Philly, all play on the holidays. And this is right before the holiday. So this might be an opportunity. Maybe if you have Seattle that week and you feel comfortable about using them week 12, you can save yourself a holiday team by saving Seattle for week 12. I just want to throw that out there. All that said, I'm going to have entries on Seattle. It's just a matter of how many. Is it going to be 1? Is it going to be 50%? Is it going to be 20%? I haven't figured that out yet. I'm honestly really struggling with this decision. But there are reasons not to use Seattle.
Yes. And I don't mean to interrupt you. I joke slightly about Sam Darnold. My brother's probably going to try and convince me to have at least one entry on Seattle. But it is interesting as you look, and this is what's great about Survivor, as you look at sort of this future schedule, right? Seattle does feel like a team to me that's probably going to be playing for something. But as you said, week 17, 18 is really a crapshoot. But it's like, you talked about week 12 at Tennessee, right? Week 13, home to Minnesota. Where is even Minnesota at that point? There's so many variables. And so you obviously have a lot more experience than I do in terms of how this can shake out. But to your point, right? New Orleans scored 80 points in the first 2 weeks last year. We're a favorite against the Super Bowl champ in week 3, and the rest is history.
Yeah, I'm going to be intrigued to see how many people take Seattle and Grandissimo, because the strategy with pools like that is you want to go a little chalkier in general with the smaller pools. So, I mean, could the Grandissimo Seattle be 50% or more? I wouldn't be surprised. It's gonna be interesting to see. Saturday night, I can't wait to see how this all shakes out. We got a comment here rolling in. Carolina might have fired their head coach by week 17. That's very true. That is very, very true. Good point.
Well, Gerard Mayo won a football game for the New England Patriots in week 18. That really, frankly, probably cost him his job had he lost that game. Who knows? But no, I digress. But really, I can't get enough of this contest, man. All right, what do we got next?
Love it. Cowboys at Bears. Deron Bland out again in practice. And let me tell you, the Cowboys defense looked awful against the Giants at the end of that game. You heard Brian Daboll say at halftime, we're going to be more aggressive, and they were. Russell Wilson was just chucking up moon balls, and the Cowboys had no answers. I got to wonder, by the way, Diggs missed practice today with an illness as well. This Cowboys secondary's banged up. You've got Ben Johnson, one of the best play callers in the NFL. He should have success. I love the over in this game, Jason. So
I do too.
In terms of yards allowed to wide receivers, it's only a small sample size, 2 games so far this season. The Cowboys and Bears have given up the most yards this season to wide receivers. Cowboys, it's such a drop-off, though. Listen to this. 226.5 yards per game allowed to wide receivers. Second, Bears, 169. Wow. This just speaks to how awful that Cowboys secondary is. So let's keep an eye on Diggs and see if this illness is a problem. I think he's probably going to play, but Deron Bland is the big one. And by the way, Diggs I don't have that much confidence in him when he is healthy. So
I hear you.
I don't think I could stomach. This is one where I'm probably going to bet the Bears, but not have an entry on them in Survivor. I think the Cowboys off that exhausting game in overtime against the Giants, I think they're going to be mentally and physically exhausted here, following up with a road game here at Chicago. I kind of like the Bears as a sneaky play, but I don't have the stones to do it in Survivor.
What would you say to me, who sort of thought the Bears were going to play a very close competitive game in week 2? I was so happy
too
for Dan. Okay, so you did too. So I wasn't alone, but regardless of any action, I was so happy for Dan Campbell, right? Because it had to be a tough elimination from the postseason, tough offseason, tough week 1. Everybody leaves. Everybody's putting Ben Johnson on a pedestal. 52 piece. I love it. Happy for him.
I got to fact check this one. This will be Cowboys haven't played man coverage a single snap. Wow. If that's true, that is fascinating. Another good point here. Dallas has Green Bay on deck. All right. Moving on here. We've got Cardinals, 49ers. Brock Purdy has a chance to play. Brock Purdy was supposed to be out 2 to 5 weeks. All of a sudden, Brock Purdy's out 1 week. Mac Jones looks pretty good in his place, and Brock Purdy seems to be healing up. 49ers have 2 guards that are hurt. I would make the argument that one of those guards that is hurt is an absolute upgrade. They brought in this rookie left guard who just looked phenomenal for the 49ers. So I think that's actually an upgrade. I do want to say if Burford, the other guard, is going to be playing for the Niners, though. Arizona beat the 49ers twice last year. One of them was that game where the Niners lost their kicker. Devastated me in Circa Survivor last year, week 5 or so. I think the 49ers are a sneaky play here. If Purdy plays, without Purdy, I don't like it. You got to remember the 49ers are also without Kittle. They're also without Ayuk. Juwan Jennings didn't practice today. This team's really banged up. Cardinals are too, though. This is a game. I can't give any advice on this game until I see that practice report on Friday, because Cardinals have 3 cornerbacks that are hurt right now. I love the 49ers if all 3 of those guys are playing for Arizona, but I can't make that decision right now. I can't give you guys advice on this game without knowing that. So my best advice is to keep an eye on the practice report, and maybe the 49ers become an intriguing play later in the week.
So good stuff there. So Mac Jones versus Brock Purdy. Clearly you said the 49ers appeal to you much more if Brock Purdy plays. Obviously, you know I'm not a huge Mac Jones fan. What did you think overall? How big of a drop-off is that if it's Jones versus Purdy?
I mean, statistically, it didn't look like much of a drop-off, but I think from Purdy to Mac Jones is a massive drop-off, and it's not even close. I've heard there's some arguments on Twitter right now that, Mac Jones is just as good, and Kyle Shanahan's always wanted Mac Jones in his system and all that. I think it is a massive.
I am so glad you see that through the same lens that I do.
I mean, how many quarterbacks? We talk about the Shanahan system. How many quarterbacks have struggled in this Shanahan system? Trey Lance, C.J. Beathard. Who was the first guy? Former New England quarterback that the Niners started with when Shanahan got there. Garoppolo. He was hit or miss. Garoppolo had some good years, but no, the veteran that was a longtime Patriots quarterback and Texans quarterback. His name's escaping me right now.
And he passed away.
No.
And his name. You're.
No. You're talking about the dude.
Ryan Mallett? Is that his name?
No, I know. Yeah. That's not who I'm referring to, though. That played for the Niners.
Did he play for both? No, he played for the Texans.
I think he played for the Texans and Patriots, though. But a different guy who played for the Texans and Patriots.
Hey, we're going to just stop the show because Tony and I got to figure this out. So we'll see. That's
goodness gracious.
Eat at me. I should know it.
But to put a bow on that, I think the 49ers. Brian Hoyer, yes, we got the comment that rolled in. Brian Hoyer was the guy.
That's hilarious. I don't even think of him as an NFL quarterback. That's why.
Brian Hoyer, if you're out there watching, I apologize. Who might be out there watching?
Go check your bank statement, Brian, and all those checks you cash are being a backup in this league. Sorry.
I joke about Brian Hoyer watching this show, but I think Real Cormier might watch this show. Do you remember that name, former Red Sox pitcher? I've seen Real Cormier and he's on Twitter. Who knows if it's the real guy, right? Because there's a lot of fake people on Twitter, but I've seen several of our posts liked by Real Cormier, and I wonder if that's him or not.
I think it is him. I also think that perhaps he had several entries on the Dolphins week 1, so maybe he's not as interested in the Survivor Contest anymore. But shout out number 34, Real Cormier, lefty coming out of the pen. Really had some good stretches for the Boston Red Sox.
Absolutely.
So Tony, this Sunday night game, right?
Yeah.
I know that 49ers fans are not upset that the Chiefs are 0-2. And I'm trying not to react to the Giants. I still think the Giants beat the Cowboys in week 2, but I guess they didn't. No, the Cowboys emerged victorious, but for some reason I'm still thinking about the Giants. So for me, well, yeah, I find it hard to believe Mahomes goes to 0-3 here. Brian Daboll and whoever, if it's Russell Wilson, I think it's going to be Russell Wilson. I don't know, man. I think the Giants have a chance to. You can be sure the Giants are going to show up, is what I'm saying.
The Giants will show up. They'll be motivated. I like the Chiefs in this spot a lot. So I do a Survivor video each week for Oddshark.
Okay.
And the Chiefs, no Circa implications, just regular standard Survivor pool players, and the Chiefs.
No holidays.
No holidays, exactly. So the Chiefs are my pick. In Circa Survivor, I don't like it because the Chiefs are on both holidays, and you heard my, spiel, my soapbox earlier about how important it is to save multiple holiday teams. But Circa Survivor aside, for standard Survivor pools, Chiefs are in a good spot here. Sunday Night Football, Patrick Mahomes, under the lights. I think the Giants, the same thing I said about the Cowboys, the Giants being exhausted physically and mentally after that game. That one hurt, man. That, as exhilarating as it was for me to be on the Cowboys side and get that win, and as crushing as it was for you rooting against it so that you could gain equity in this contest, imagine being a player in that locker room after that game. That was a tough one. The players looked tired. That defense of the Giants looked tired in overtime. And now you've got to, welcome in what some people think is still one of the best teams in the NFL here. So revenge game for Steve Spagnuolo. He was the defensive coordinator for the Giants. He was actually the interim head coach for the Giants for a while as well. So he'll be ready for this one. Love the Chiefs and standard Survivor pools. I don't think I can put a Circa Survivor entry on them, though.
Yeah, and there is the rub, how the holidays impact this contest. I guess for me, right, I'm not so the Chiefs need to show me something a little bit here. And given the flukiness of this league, I think there's a little bit of a pressure here. I know it's early on the Chiefs, but I think you got to get it done here if you're Kansas City. And I think they will. Maybe it's the blowout on the board, perhaps. It'll be consideration for me, at least peeking at it. But yeah, and maybe as a zig, but to not have that team available around the holidays when they already got 2 losses on the books and are gonna need victories, it's hard for me to look there.
Is it fair to say that unless you're a Chiefs fan or you have some sort of a bet on the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, MVP, Chiefs to win the AFC West, Super Bowl, something like that, everybody in America is going to be rooting for the New York Giants to make the Chiefs 0-3 and solidify this idea of a Super Bowl hangover?
It's a great point. And as you made that great point, it's so true. That makes me like the Chiefs even more. Do you know what I mean? Is that everybody saw the Giants almost get it done against Dallas and they get absolutely throttled.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, last game here, Monday Night Football, Lions, Ravens. I think I said this earlier in the show. I think this is going to be one of the least selected games in Circa Survivor. I think both of these two teams are too valuable to use moving forward. The Ravens with the not just Thanksgiving implications, but other spots to use them later in the season as well. I want zilch to do with this game from a Circa Survivor perspective. How about you?
I agree with you. And as we circle back, I'm very excited to watch this game, as I'm excited to watch the Rams and Eagles, but there won't be any Survivor implications. And I do believe if the Lions were going to be competitive in this game, the best chance was to put up 52 points last week and really puff out your chest a little bit, to have sort of the right swagger and confidence to go in there and have a chance to compete against Lamar Jackson at home. I'm excited to watch that game. But when I look at this contest, right, even after 2 weeks, without all of this carnage, as the board starts to shake itself out a little bit, I'm going to be surprised if there's going to be massive carnage. I think this season, it's already playing out very differently than last year. I think that's going to continue. I think there are many, many spots this week where we sort of last week, all those favorites got through. There were spots where the favorites could have lost. Whereas week 3, it's not going to surprise me if there isn't a lot of sweat and this thing really starts to settle down. So I hope there is, but I think this thing's going to settle down and remain extraordinarily competitive.
I'll agree with you. It won't surprise me if what you just said is true, but it also won't surprise me if we have carnage, because I've seen it too many times where we get lulled into that sense of security. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Hey, what are we going to do with our champ entry, buddy?
I'm so glad you brought that up. It's so interesting. And this is, this conversation could be happening over the phone right now. If the conversation was happening over, I'm going to pretend it's happening over the phone. So I'm not going to pay too much attention of what I'm saying with, to the audience. So Tony, what we've been doing is sort of like, we want this thing to go through. So it's been chalk, right? So certainly we got some confidence in Buffalo. Tomorrow night, we could put this thing through. Gosh, the one thing I'll say is I'm not so sure I want to decide in this moment. We reserve the right to not do that. But there's a part of me that wants to maybe not go as chalky, perhaps. We took Philadelphia week 1, so we don't have them available around the holiday. We took the Ravens, so we don't have, I feel like we have to keep the Chiefs. We got to keep the Chiefs.
Yes. No holiday teams, period. Yep.
I think perhaps it could be a reluctant play on Seattle here for us. But anyway, I'll shut up. Any thoughts you want to give the audience on the champ entry before we get out?
Yeah, Seattle. I agree with you. Let's not make the decision now. Maybe we'll update people on social media beforehand who we're going with.
That.
But I think the Falcons are interesting. I don't know if I can get you on board with the Falcons or not, though. I think that's an intriguing play. The Bills are pretty chalky, but that would be cool if we could get that through on Thursday, and then maybe some big boys get knocked out on Sunday. So I think those are the ones that it comes down to for me. I agree with your sentiment that at some point we're going to have to start, being a little more risky. I think it's still too early. I want to get this thing through to like week 4 or 5 or so, because I want people to join us on this journey,
Well, it's really interesting. Some of the spots in which you were bullish, right? I remember week 1, you were bullish on the Steelers against the Jets, and that won. I don't recall if there was an entry. Maybe not. I don't know. Yeah, you had an entry on the Steelers. You were bullish on the Chargers in both weeks 1 and 2, but didn't have an entry on the Chargers in week 1, if that's accurate, but did come back with them in week 2. I bring that up in the context. The Atlanta play feels like a little bit of a against the grain play. And so I'm going to think about that as I sleep tonight.
Absolutely. So we'll have some phone conversations or some text between now and the time we need to make our decision. We'll keep you guys posted on social media. Thank you guys for listening. Do us a favor. Hit that thumbs up. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, retweet, etc. We really appreciate you guys so much.